Hey guys, we are starting with Leo. Now, Leo is a very interesting hero. He's from a very sort of classical MOBA trope, which is basically hero with a giant sword. We haven't really had hero with a giant sword in Vainglory. It's very anime inspired. Obviously got the classical Vainglory technology twist on Leo, which I love. I think he looks really cool. So he comes out with his base skin and his Renaissance skin, which you can see here. I will show you the skins in depth, including the two other skins being released on 4.3 after we've talked about Leo and done some gameplay of him. So let's talk about Leo. Start with his perk. Whenever Leo uses an ability, the turbo engine on his blade engages, granting him 0.5 bonus movement speed for 5 seconds. This can stack up to 3 times. Additionally, Leo's basic attacks are slow, but deal damage to all targets in front of him. So he's got a fairly slow attack speed scaling, a little bit like Lance. However, he's got a massive move speed bonus that he gets, which will sort of ramp his move speed up. His move speed is fairly low to begin with, but he's going to get a massive movement speed bonus whenever he uses an ability, which grants him 1.5 extra movement speed whenever he's using that. He's got a 3.8 range, which is a decent range for a melee carry, and his scaling is as follows. Shield and armor, 30 to 85 and 20 to 60. Energy, 328 to 639. He's got kind of, I would say, lowish health scaling compared to the rest of the field, but his weapon scaling in terms of base weapon power is very, very good. He's got all the way up to 168. I think that compensates for the slow attack speed, but also you've got to know that his damage that he deals with basic attacks are essentially like a conal attack in front of him. They deal a lot of damage, and they can clear minion waves and really quickly, and he's very devastating in team fights. Crushing Strike. Leo charges his blade before striking down in front of him, heavily dealing damage to enemies in the area. Think of this a little bit like Sion's Q from League of Legends, if you know what I mean. If you don't know League of Legends, essentially, it's a charge up, you're rooted in place, and you deal damage directly in front of you. I'll show you in-game soon after. This is a very hard-hitting ability. It doesn't gain much energy cost. It only goes up 20 over the 5 levels, but it gains a hell of a lot of damage, and the cooldown gets reduced by 3 seconds if you overdrive it. The ratio is 250%. There's no benefit to overdriving this other than the cooldown reduction of 1.5 seconds and a massive increase of 70 damage. Jet Cyclone. Leo briefly charges his blade before dashing to a target location, damaging and slowing enemies around him. The slow amount caps at 75%, which is, I think, a pretty heavy slow, but it makes sense given that there's a 30% weapon ratio scaling. So it starts off as a very, very minor slow, but it gets pretty obnoxious as the game goes on. This doesn't really gain much from overdriving in terms of damage. It only has a 0.5 second reduction in cooldown, but you get a 0.5 second extra on the slow. This, I don't think you ever overdrive this ability from what I've looked at. I think you'll have to look at the ult to have a really sort of a good ponder, but I think overall you want to be overdriving your A and your ultimate. Speaking of ultimate, Leon briefly charges his blade, then jumps in a target direction, damaging enemies in the area and empowering himself with Lion's Might. Lion's Might. Granting additional effects on his other abilities. If there are enemy heroes around Leo, he instead uses Lion's Fury, shoving all enemy heroes in a target direction before leaping them to them and unleashing 2 great strikes on them. I think this is basically, if you don't have enemies around you when you use the ability, it will jump to a target location and grant you the buff. If there are heroes around you, you'll use this other ability. So it's like a 2-pronged ultimate. The empowered attacks that you get is Crushing Strike, deals bonus damage and causes enemies to bleed, and the damage per second is shown below here with a 100% weapon power scaling ratio, which is pretty insane. That's overdrive 110 damage per second with a 100% weapon power ratio. If you hit your A during the Lion's Might, that's going to be absolutely ridiculous. And then the Jet Cyclone deals bonus damage and roots enemies instead of slowing them. So you could get a 2-second root, but it's already a 1.5 second root, which is pretty insane anyway. It really depends on the charge up time and his Crushing Strike. But I think in general you're going to overdrive his A and overdrive his C for the maximum damage output. You do get 40% bonus damage here, which you can see is 220, 200% ratio plus 40% bonus damage. Could get a lot of burst, but you're already getting 370 damage with 250% weapon ratio on his Q, plus the bleed as well, which is insane. There is a case where you might want to overdrive the B if you want to get extended root durations in team fights, but overall I think you overdrive ult and I think you overdrive A. So let's have a look at him in game and talk about what he does. Okay, we're going to have a look at Leo now. I'm not going to show you like the whole game that I'm playing here. I'm just going to show you little excerpts of it. I kind of want to show you exactly how he plays out. Now, I think he could be a pretty good jungler, but unfortunately for me, this is a bot game, and bots don't like you going jungle. They also like suiciding into you, but that's great, because that'll help me get through this game quicker, because it's a bot game. I just want to get through it as quickly as possible. So Leo's Q ability is this kind of like, do you know what, let me take off instant cast abilities. So Leo's Q is this ability which you can see here, comes in a cone. So you have like a conal attack like this. And you can see also his basic attack range is pretty long. You actually got a pretty long basic attack range. I'll try and hit someone at the very edge of it. There, it's a pretty huge basic attack range. Obviously he has a giant sword. Makes sense, right? But he's got a very, very large basic attack range for a melee carry in Vainglory. Like, I can sit outside turret radius and hit people like these minions here, which you wouldn't usually be able to do. I'll just wait for it to come back towards me. I'll show you his B. His B attack range, his range is like this. There's a little bit of a charge up time when you use it. I'll show you in a second once Lyra decides to die or move back. So you deal damage like this, you jump in, and then you can slow them to make sure you land your A, which has a bit of a wind up time. But my Lyra bot is just quite happy just face tanking. Go on, Lyra, you do it. So I think those two skills are pretty self-explanatory. Both of them have a charge-up time. They have good scaling. I think you max A, absolutely. A lot of people probably ask which of those you end up maxing. I think you max A, absolutely. When it comes to builds, what I think is because he's got such good scaling on all of his abilities, you have to go Sorrowblade. And I think then you can go kind of whatever you like after that point. Tension Bow, if you want to go for the strict burst damage. I think you could very easily go for a Breaking Point, because all of your abilities are going to stack Breaking Point, and the fact he actually benefits from attack speed more so than you would think with a slow basic attack, and I'll demonstrate that once I get some attack speed later this game. But I'll just show you kind of like the go-to combo with him. Maybe when these minions have died down. Actually, I'm probably strong enough. Wait for them to come towards me. Bang in, and then when they're slowed, you just jump and land your Q. You can also use your Q to poke as well. It's got quite a decent range in the laning phase. But I mean, just look at the attack range on Leo. It is absolutely insane. And he's got great wave clear as well, because you can just sweep those minions. If you're wondering kind of what the attack radius is on his sweep, think of it like a semicircle in front of him. Everywhere that his... So I'll try and do it over here. Everywhere that his sword passes through, that is going to be where his the radius of his kind of attack range is. I'll kind of show you here. He's hitting all of these minions. So he's hitting all of those minions, and he's hitting Petal there in that scenario. So he's got like a small semicircle in front of him. A little bit of a wind-up on all of his abilities, of course, including his A, B, and his ultimate. Everyone has like a kind of bit of a wind-up, so he is quite a telegraphed hero. But I think, you know, they're not so much of a wind-up that it's impossible to make him work. I'll come back a little bit later when I've picked up a bit of attack speed and picked up his ultimate, and we can kind of touch on what they do too. So I picked up a bit of attack speed. Leo works really well with lifesteal, by the way, because of that sweeping ability. It gets lifesteal on everybody that it hits. So I want to show you one of the forms of his ultimate now. Given that we've got some grouped up members here, I'll show you the ultimate where he kind of has enemies around him. So you can see that, jump in, and that is his ultimate. So he gets 2 big hits, and he knocks them away. And that's the first form of his ultimate. He does not get the empowered abilities if enemies are around him. It's worth noting. He gets the empowered abilities when enemies are not around him. So I'll try and find a situation where that's relevant. But you can see also now that I've picked up a little bit of attack speed, how much more quickly he attacks. And also, you know, just the lifesteal that you get, because you've got such hard-hitting basic attacks. Lifesteal works really well with him, and I think also it's going to be necessary in teamfights. I mean, just look at the damage that you get from his Q with just a Sorrowblade. I mean, I'm very far ahead, of course, because I'm against bots. But it is worth noting that you do have a lot of damage front-loaded onto that Q. I mean, 417 damage at level 6 is still very good. And also the scaling on his B, even with only just a couple of points in it, is very strong too. He's just got such hard-hitting attacks, and especially with a lot of weapon power scaling, he can be very strong. It's also worth noting his B, as if you may not have known, can jump over walls. So most walls you can jump over with his B. It's a pretty good engage tool when you're out of vision range. Sorry, Jewel, needed that for my poison shiv. I think build path-wise it's flexible. I do think lifesteal works really well on him though, so I do think you should consider some lifesteal. I'm going for a Sorrowblade Poison Shiv build, and not only will you apply mortal wounds to everybody that you hit with your sweep attacks, you also just get that lifesteal when you're hitting things with your basic attack too. Have a look at the how much attack speed benefits him, though. I mean, I'm just going to tank this turret. Why not? Have a look how much attack speed benefits him when you've got that attack speed loaded up onto his kit. He actually gets a very, very sort of frequent basic attack. Now, I want to show you the second form of his ultimate where you get the empowered abilities. So you can see here, there we go. There's the bleed, there's the damage. You can see petals bleeding down there, and that's the empowered abilities that you get. Absolutely insane if you can get it off. But you make the choice, right? You make the choice between using his ultimate as a strict piece of damage and knockback, or to empower his other abilities. You've got to make sure you have those other abilities up and available, though, because you probably only have the frame to get one empowered ability off both A and B wise. So you can't get two empowered. For instance, you couldn't get two empowered A's off during the empowered ability window, just because it's a very limited window to work with. But he's very strong. And very fun to play as well. He just feels very satisfying. You know, jump in, slam, sword, bang. Very, 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 very satisfying to play. So that's Leo. I think there are probably some animation cancels people can work out. Like you can A, basic attack, then try and basic attack again to animation cancel on the A. You might be able to animation cancel the B as soon as you're out by basic attacking. I haven't figured out if you could like B into animation cancel A. I'll try it in a second, actually, just before we close this segment on Leo. So B, then spam A. No, not really. You can't really animation cancel there. But there might be some animation cancels that people can work out to sort of reduce the lag between using his abilities and landing basic attacks. I just want to quickly do another one of those ultimates. Oh, actually, my team has kind of cleaned up everybody. I'll do one more. Okay, and then we're going to go in. That stuns, well, roots rather, and bang. There we go. That's insane. Right, that was Leo. Hope you guys enjoyed. And now I'll go on to the skins. Okay, for the rest of the video, I'm going to briefly show you the skins with a little bit of a music track to go to it. I'm going to focus less on Resistance Leo, on Medieval Ylva. I'm going to focus mostly on Netherknight Ardan. It might be the best skin that Vainglory has ever made, so I hope you enjoy it.